Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It is being recorded, so if you do need to review the information, it will be found on events.bbcommunity.org. If you do have any questions, please type them in the chat option. We'll do our best to answer those at the end of the webinar. If we don't know the answer, we can definitely follow up with you as well. Let's see. There's a chat. Sorry. I don't know if someone's trying to get in. Okay. No questions right there. My name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB serving the Pacific Southwest. And we've been holding webinars just twice a week for the summer just to help our businesses get some useful tools during this time. I know everything's changing and there's so many questions about everything, I think, right now, just because everything's out of our control. So we're really happy and excited to have a speaker today from the SBA to help us navigate through the PPP loan and the forgiveness program, because that's always changing as well too. So please welcome Jamye Solorzano. She is a Southern California Imperial County native, a first-generation college graduate from San Diego State University. She has dedicated her life to public service and has a special place in her heart for veterans and the disabled community. Prior to SBA, she's worked in public service for the state of California. She enjoys community outreach, troubleshooting, and also problem solving for the small business community. She also has a special talent for collaborating and bringing people together. So please welcome our speaker today, Jamye.
Hi, everyone. Okay, special thanks to the Better Business Bureau. BBB does an awesome job to support business and cross-support SBA's mission to empower small business to start, grow, expand, recover from disaster. Our relationship is real and collaborative and powerful. So thank you very much to the Better Business Bureau. And today we're going to talk about the basics of Paycheck Protection loan forgiveness process. So one of the things that I want everybody on the Zoom today to promise me is don't let this application process be a stressor. We have so much going on right now in the world, and we're going to be here to help you. So I don't know where you're feeling about this, but I'm going to break down the basics of the program, and then we're going to be here together for the process. So the staff is awesome. Faustine at the Better Business Bureau, they're amazing. We're going to follow up with more information. I'm going to share what we have today, and more information is forthcoming. But let the knowledge empower you to feel more confident in your next steps. I promise you, like I said, the communication is going to be there. We may not know all of the answers today, but as we move forward, we're going to stay in touch, possibly schedule another webinar. And Faustine is terrific at answering everybody's questions and keeping them in the queue and following up with more information when we have it. So just keep that in mind. We want to use this knowledge to empower us. Please don't let it be a stress to you. This is the beginning of the process, and we're going to be providing more information. Okay, so let's let's move on here. Okay, so like I just said, we're going to share some basic high-level information, transfer knowledge early in the process, describe the Paycheck Protection Loan Forgiveness application process from the borrower's perspective. How do we get started? And then provide information on resources to assist with the application process. So let's go back. What is Paycheck Protection Program? So Paycheck Protection Program was an SBA loan, is an SBA loan that helps small businesses keep their workforce employed during the coronavirus COVID-19. Okay, so if there's anybody on the line, I'm going to stop right here, that has not applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, and they think that there's some potential eligibility, we need to know who you are, and we need to make sure that we're transferring that information. So keep that in mind. If you're on this loan forgiveness and you're like, hey, I need to apply for the loan, we need to have a communication so that we can pass the information along to you quickly. Okay, so this is the basics of loan forgiveness, and all of this information that I'm going to present in the PowerPoint is available on SBA.gov. So what is PPP loan forgiveness? It's a written application and review process requesting forgiveness, the canceling of the debt, the loan, of all of the loan, the full amount of the loan, or a portion, part of the PP loan, depending on how it works out for your respective small business. So what are the first steps and how do we kick off that process? So this is for borrowers. So say I'm a small business owner and I'm wondering, what is my first step? I want to figure out what I need to do for Paycheck Protection Program, and I want to take one step forward. So the first thing is advanced preparation. So as a borrower, you're going to start, and we're going to help you in this PowerPoint, you're going to start thinking about, what do I need to ramp up to that forgiveness? So technically, what happens to kick off the process is you're going to get all your paperwork together, and then you're going to complete an application. So the application is a submission from the borrower to the servicing lender requesting forgiveness. So you're going to fill out an application and you're going to say, I'm going to request loan forgiveness. So that's how it's going to start. So there's two forms. So you're thinking, okay, so what do I do? What forms do I use? So there's a couple forms. There's instructions for these forms. Each form has a page of instructions on it. And then where can you find these forms? So the two forms are the SBA form 3508 EZ form, and then the SBA form 3508, and that's more of the longer form, right? So there's two forms depending on what your category is, and we're going to talk about that coming up. The SBA, the longer form, the 3508, also includes a loan forgiveness calculation form, and a Schedule A worksheet. So to answer your questions, there's two forms. There's instructions for these forms. They're available right now on SBA.gov. And as the application process, the forgiveness application process moves forward, some of those forms will be available on the respective websites of the lenders. So say you borrow money at one of the financial institutions in Arizona, and you're getting ready to fill out the form, you're going to check on that website, because more than likely what's going to happen is the lenders are going to take those forms and they might behind the scenes customize the forms and have them available on the website with the same data and information. But we're going to walk through kind of what it looks like so you can get it, so you can wrap your mind around it, what it looks like as you're moving forward. Okay, so we know what forms there are, we know there's instructions, and we know where we can find them for now, right, on SBA.gov. The second piece is when is all of this going to start? Well, for you as a small business owner, it's starting right now because you can start ramping up and getting your information together. As far as that application process and that submission of that application process, there's discussions, and we're talking hopefully by August 10th. So today is the 28th. So still another week and a half out. So that's the targeted date, and that date may change. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so for those visual people on the webinar, like myself, folks that are visually reliant, you want to see what it looks like, right? So this is a copy of the PPP loan forgiveness application form, the 3508 EZ. Okay, so here's the basic information. We're going to go through some of those fields and talk about them. But as you can see, it's nothing to be feared of. So I want to say it's a little over 2 pages, and basically a page of some questions that look like this. I think this is actually 3/4 of the page. So it's not a lot of information. In fact, you already have the majority of the information to complete the application. So this is the Paycheck Protection Loan Forgiveness Application Form, the EZ form. And we're going to talk about the difference between the EZ and then the 3508 standard form. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay. So you're thinking, okay, Jamie, you've told me about 2 applications, right? Now, which one am I going to fill out? Which one applies for me? So both of the PPP loan forgiveness application forms, the 3508 EZ and 3508 standard, provide borrowers with the option of using the original 8-week covered period for loans made before June 5th or an extended 24-week covered period. So the way that I like to break it down and look at it is determine if that EZ form is for you. And that's what we're going to talk about mostly today, is the EZ version of the forgiveness application. So the EZ version of the forgiveness application is intended for use in the following 3 scenarios. So if you're a small business, or if you're an independent contractor and you can fit yourself or your business into these 3 scenarios, then the EZ form is for you. So first scenario, self-employed and have no employees, right? So if that's you, look at the EZ version of the form. Or if you're a small business where you did not reduce the salaries or wages of your employees by more than 25%, and you did not reduce the number of hours of your employees, then the EZ form could also be for you. Third example, experience reductions in business activity as a result of health directives related to COVID-19 and did not reduce the salary or wages of their employees by more than 25%. So the key here is, are you self-employed? Are you a small business with no employees? Did your business kind of remain the same? Or do you have a lot of changes as we went through? So just keep that in mind. This is going to be a brief overview to expose you to the applications and the processes. And we're going to be going later on and providing more information about more specifics. And we'll be getting into the weeds in a later webinar. This webinar is to provide you with the basics. Okay, so there's our 3 scenarios. All of this is available on sba.gov. And we're presenting it to you today. This information is available on sba.gov, and I'll show you some other places where you can get some more information as well, and your resource partners that you can communicate with. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so what I did here is basically broke down those questions that are on the form, right? So they're on the form and you need to fill it out. And where do you start, right? I want something to, this is just a little bit more user friendly. Everything on here is basically on that form. So it's broken down, I broke it down into 5 different categories. So the PPP loan details. So that's going to be your PPP loan amount and when you got your loan. So we can all research when that happened. There's also going to be a question on the lender PPP loan number. Also information that you can easily gather. If you did have an EIDL application and you received the advance, you also want to get that EIDL application number and that advance amount. So you want to go through your records and figure out what that was. And for the folks that are interested in an EIDL application, again, reach out to us. The economic injury disaster loan is currently open. And so we want to make sure that if there's potential eligibility, that everybody knows about that. So 2 more questions. FullTime Equivalents, right? So that's your employee information. So you want to remember you're going to be thinking about your full-time equivalents, right? How many employees you have? Did you have 2 part-time employees? Did you have a full-time employee? And so you're going to look at the employees. You're going to compare the employees that you had at the time of your loan application, right? When you first made that PPP loan application. And then you're going to look at if there's changes. So what changed from the time that you made that application? And so those are 2 of the questions that are on the application that we just looked at. Okay, so payroll information and then non-payroll information. So one of the questions, again, these are the same exact questions, just in a different format. I think it's a little bit user-friendly to understand it this way, is take a look at your payroll schedule. Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Is it twice a month? Is it monthly? Is it other? Figure out what that is and get ready to check that box. And then one of the things about proof of payroll. So I'm sure everybody went into this saying, well, I'm probably going to have to figure out how to prove what I spent on payroll. So what do those instruments, those documents look like? So bank statements, tax forms, state quarterly wage reports, your receipts, payments for your health insurance. Those are some of the basics and the heavy hitters for proof of payroll. So you want to gather that information as well. So from the time that you've applied, what's gone on with the payroll? Now on the 3508, the loan forgiveness form, not the easy form, I wanted to throw this in there. There's also a calculation form on that. And that'll help you to list your full-time equivalents and payroll, and to help you format it so you have all the information available. But it's upon you to take that first step and gather the payroll information. So before you even, we're going to tell you what fields are on the form, but it's up to you and your responsibility to make sure that you're accurately gathering that information and getting ready to front load that form. So there's a period of time that you need to be ready in advance and gather this information. And then you can start thinking about, okay, well, let me fill in the blanks. Like, what's the answer to this question? And figure out what your answers, and then also what your questions are going to be. So the non-payroll information, that's your business mortgage, your interest payments, your business rent or lease payments, and then also utility payments. So I broke it down here. We had quite a few questions early on about what is utility payments. So utilities are electricity, gas, water, phone, your internet service provider fees, and potentially some transportation costs, including fuel for your vehicles. And so that's what those are. So your covered period. So covered period is just a fancy word for what is the period that you're going to be engaging in. So is it 8 weeks? Are you looking at that 8-week forgiveness piece, or are you looking at the new flexibility of the Paycheck Protection Program, where you want to engage in that 24-week period? Or is it something in between? So your covered period is going to start when your loan was dispersed. So when U.S. Treasury issued those funds into the bank account, and if you received more than one deposit, it would be the first deposit. So that's when it's starting. So then it's for some people, they can engage in that 8-week period, or if you're going with the flexible period, it's going to be the 24-week period, or something in between. And so we'll talk about that. But all that covered period is the beginning of when you receive the loan, the funds, and then what that period is to when you're going to be spending down those funds. So one key to this to remember is when you are going to fill out your application for forgiveness, the process can take a while. So there's, when it gets submitted, there's going to be a review process with the lender. And well, first there's your review process, because you're going to be front loading the information, getting all your documents together, asking questions to those resource partners or whoever you have, or the SBA, so that your application is accurate, because that's the name of the game, an accurate application, a quality, accurate, complete application. We want that more than we want to operate quickly, because you want to make sure that you have it right and you're optimizing loan forgiveness. So the second piece of it is the borrower must have exhausted all the funds in which you're requesting forgiveness. So if you're still at, say you're not going to reach 60% of your spending on payroll until November. Say that doesn't happen until November 1st. So you would not be asking for loan forgiveness until November 1st if you're asking for all those funds to be forgiven. So there is a timing piece to this, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, especially in our later webinars when we have more information. I'm providing the basic information, and we can't get into all the scenarios for every business, because every business is different. So it really does depend. But I want to get you the information as early as possible and let you know how you can, if you have questions, where you can go and how we can follow up in the future. So this, again, application, these are the same exact questions on that application. I just channeled it into 5 different buckets, and it's not 100%, but everything is on that application. So of course I think there's a signature and some other pieces on it, but this is the basics for the easy application. Okay, thanks, Faustine. Okay, so what are some tips? Advanced preparation is key. So you guys, everybody on this webinar is doing an awesome job, because you are preparing in advance, trying to figure out what you need, trying to figure out what it looks like for your business, trying to optimize loan forgiveness, trying to educate yourself on everything that you need to know. So the preparation is the first step as part of a borrower. So again, just like when we went out with how to complete the Paycheck Protection Program application, or how to complete an economic injury disaster loan, our first words were, get these items together, get this information together before you even start to tackle the form or go there. So gather your information, gather the data, gather the receipts. If you have payroll stuff, your rent, mortgage, all your bills, all those documents that prove what you spent the money on, you wanna get that together and have that in one location, and you wanna check it over. I would suggest, don't just do this in one swoop, right? Don't just say, okay, I'm gonna spend 1 hour tomorrow and I'm gonna do it all. Approach it iteratively. Gather some of the information, go back to it the next day and say, okay, here I am, I have this, I'm ready for this, what else do I need? So that iterative approach, you'll have all the information instead of just rushing through it in a half an hour. So do a quick analysis of where you are in the forgiveness process and what documents do you have? So if you've spent the 60% on payroll costs and you already know you're there, then you know you're ramping up to fill out that application. If you just received your Paycheck Protection Program loan last week, then you're not going to be there yet. So look at the timing and the date. Look at that application. All those are keys as to where you're at and where you are in the spend down. So when you need help, if you need help, you can reach out to SBA. There's district offices in Arizona and San Diego, and then there's resource partners. And like I mentioned, we're going to be coming back around and providing more details. What we could do is we could do a webinar on completing the form. We can share information with you from our small business development centers on online webinars for completing the form. You can reach out to a resource partner. So the key is to figure out what your questions are. And we can also take questions after this, and Faustine can flow them to us, and we can get back to you as well. Okay, so if your business is closed, God forbid that happened, but what I want to say is there's still potential for eligibility. So if your scenario did not go down the complete happy path, there's still potential for eligibility, and it may be reduced, but there's still potential there. So provided you spent the proceeds on payroll and rent and mortgage, everyone needs to be looking into a forgiveness at some level, whether it's 100% or a portion, because there's potential eligibility out there. So don't automatically think if my business closed, I'm out of luck, because this program is flexible. They've been changing it. You know, we're now at, instead of the 8 weeks, you know, everybody heard what was going on in the small business community, and they were flexible. You know, Congress made some changes, changed it to 24 weeks. And then secondly, I know that there's discussions right now on the Hill, so the program may change again. The good news is when it is changing, it's becoming more flexible. So if you have, if there's potential eligibility and it's not 100%, we still need to follow up on doing that application. So everybody's included at some rate in the forgiveness process. Okay, so how many times can I apply for loan forgiveness? So 1 application or decision per PPP loan. So same process. When you applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, it was 1 loan per business. So you want to make sure that your application is ready and you're at the period to where you have exhausted your resources, your targeted resources, or you're okay with the reduction and you're doing your best to forecast the needs of your small business. And it all depends. So like, say for example, you don't have all of your employees on board, back on board today. But say you know that by the holiday season, you'll have your employees back on board. So maybe you look at what type of forgiveness period is good for you. So maybe that 24-week period is better for you because you'll be able to fill out the application and not have any loss of employees or not have any reduction in work hours. So, but just remember, 1 forgiveness application. So we want it to be correct. Quality and accuracy are important. If you have questions, it's better to reach out and find out the answer before you submit your application, because it's really hard, if not impossible, to make changes unless it's a mistake. So and the onus is on the borrower to make sure that that information is correct. So that's why I'm going to keep telling everybody, make sure you prepare in advance, do an iterative process. Don't hastily do it, you know, in an hour, so that you optimize your potential for forgiveness and reduce stress. Okay, so let's go. Those are basic tips on federal applications across the board. Okay, so more information. So since everybody here is a member of the Better Business Bureau, you're going to have a wealth of information, and they are the Better Business Bureau. They are professionals, and they provide information to their clients. We have a relationship with them, so I think I've been on 3 webinars already, and so we'll be back. The program isn't completely rolling out and for the second phases until August 10th or after, and that date may move. So you have plenty of time to get information. So SBA.gov, if nobody's been on SBA.gov recently, take a look. There's actually a Paycheck Protection Program page that will have information. Also, all of the CARES Act and the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, all of that information, including PPP resources, can be found on not only our website, but also on the US Treasury's website, is where, similar to loading information to a SharePoint, the site has a frequently asked questions. It has the interim final rulings for the CARES programs. It has a portal of all of the information in all the consolidated information in one location. So literally you can go to SBA PPP or US Treasury, plug that into the internet, and you're going to find that information. Your local district office. So like I mentioned, we're in San Diego, and Arizona is going to have one as well, the Arizona district office. You're free to join our newsletters. Just hop on our district office, just put in SBA San Diego district office, join our newsletters. We have one of the gals that I work with, one of my coworkers, Cynthia Harris, she's exceptionally good at making sure that she shares information with our client base. And anytime there's a change, we're sending out newsletters, and we're also sending out broadcast messages of what's happening behind the scenes at SBA, so that communication is there. And so join a district office newsletter, because when something happens at SBA, it's getting released from our district office through that newsletter instantly. So we're very proactive on that. So that's where you can find the latest information. And we're issuing press releases constantly. So anytime there's a change, I'm sure when there's a change coming up in August, we're going to have a press release on it. And if you're part of our newsletter, you're going to get an email and an alert giving you all the information in real time. And it's free. And in addition to information on Paycheck Protection Program, there are all the events that SBA is hosting or participating in with our resource partners. And so some terrific stuff about what's going on in your local area. So Arizona, you'll be able to really hear what the district office is doing. So joining the newsletter is a must for everyone. Our resource partners. So we operate, we're a federal program, right? So we're operating, we have a national footprint, and our resource partners are over 1,200 strong. So small business development centers, Service Corps retired executives, our awesome Veterans Business Outreach Center, and of course, lastly but not least, we have a resource partner directly overseeing women's business at the Women's Business Center. So they're awesome. All of them are awesome resource partners. In San Diego, I want to say we have a list of over 12 different resource partners, different storefront locations that are closed right now, but all of these folks are still operating virtually and with Zoom, so you can call on the phone or send a message and get a meeting with the Small Business Development Center business advisor. And another cool thing is I know for a fact there's a webinar on demand right now for Paycheck Protection loan forgiveness offered through the San Diego and Imperial County Small Business Development Center. So all of these resources are going to be there for you, and I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find information. Okay, let's see, do we have what else do we have? Okay, so that's the end of the information that I put together for us to get today. What we want to do, let me start my video real quick. Okay, so what we want to do is, I know we have Wendy Antonetti. She also is my coworker at the SBA, San Diego District Office. And then I know we have Faustine that is terrific at gathering the questions and filtering them to us so that we'll be able to answer the questions and get back with everybody and do it to where everybody gets their needs met. So I'm going to, if we don't have an answer for you today, we will follow up, and it's not just today. So if 2 days go by and you're like, okay, I have a question, because that's what we want to happen. We want you to take a look at what's going on with your application and your period and your covered period and figure out what your questions are. So we'll work to get some of the basic questions answered. But then when you have those really specific questions, you want to get in touch with the resource partner so you can really look at a business strategy, what's going on with your respective business, and go from there. So Faustine, do we want to do the same way we did it in the past with opening up the questions and figure out what we can take care of today, and then what would be good to follow up on?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So we have a question from Keely. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. How does the EIDL advance amount affect our PPP loan forgiveness?
Okay, so that's an awesome question. So on the EZ application, there is a question for your loan. It's asking you for your economic injury disaster loan number, and then it's also asking you for the amount. So they're gonna be asking you for that information. So what you need to do is figure out what the number was, and figure out what the amount is, and list it on that form. And what's gonna happen is not the economic injury disaster loan, but the advance amount is gonna come off of the Paycheck Protection Program, right? Not everybody has applied for both Paycheck Protection Program and the advance. So there's questions on there. You want to make sure that you answer that and you place that on the form and figure it out. If you don't know what it is, then you want to call our customer service center and figure out what your application number is. You should have all of that information in correspondence from SBA.
Great, thank you. Nicole asks, anyone who got the loan before June 5th can only use an 8-week period, or are we able to use the 24-week period instead?
Okay, so you have options. You're flexible. I believe you can use both periods. The situation is there are some people that went out really early. So depending on, they may have already exhausted all of their payroll resources within that 8-week period. So the program is flexible. When did you say that you received the loan?
It says that she got the loan before June 5th.
Okay, so June, the beginning of June or May?
Can you
Doesn't
clarify that on there,
say.
Nicole? Nicole says the loan in mid-May.
Okay, and so one of the things you want to think about is, have you exhausted all of the funds? So are the funds already, if you were already going down that 8-week period, have you already exhausted all those funds? And if you're ready to apply for loan forgiveness. So if you're in that situation, then applying for loan forgiveness may benefit you to apply earlier rather than later. Like, say, for example, you don't know, say you have all your employees right now, but you don't know how that's going to be, months from now. So depending on your specific situation, you can engage in either the 8-week or the 24-week, and it's really going to depend on where you're at with spending the money. Like, where are you? Have you spent all that money? So take those into account as well.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if you can answer this question because this involves the form. Dan writes the 3508EZ for employees at the time of loan application and at the time of forgiveness. Is that meant to be full-time employees or point-in-time employees count?
Okay, so when you went back, when you filled out that PPP application, you had a number, right? So if you had 5 employees or your full-time equivalent of the 5 employees when you received the funds, and that number changed, then you're just going to write down exactly what that number is. Now, what I want to relay to everybody is, on the U.S. Treasury site, and because I don't want to get too in the weeds, there is a breakout of full-time equivalents and some scenarios. So how does that look? How do my 3 part-time employees, what does that mean for a full-time equivalent? So take a look at that on the U.S. Treasury site. And then maybe in our next webinar, what we do is we can break down what does FTEs mean for me and my business, and get into more of the weeds. But take a look at that on U.S. Treasury's site. There's a question on the FAQ about full-time equivalents. Take a look at that, and feel free to send us a question, and we'll work to help you get it answered. And then we'll also bring it up on a later webinar, and go from there.
Hey, this is Dan. I don't know if you can hear me. Hey, so yeah, when we made our application, our bank literally said, okay, it was a point in time on the date you're making the application. What is your employee count? So if somebody worked part-time, they still counted as one. And they basically said, take a guess at the time. That's what they told us. So it was basically a swag number put in then, but on the form, it doesn't say if it's asking for average FTEs for a certain period of time or an employee count at a point in time. Like, there's just no direction on it.
Yeah, so I think what we do, full-time equivalents, you're right, when the PPP application went out, I think that was an area that probably wasn't communicated at a level that everybody understood. And full-time equivalents is a word that we use in the federal government. So what I'd like to do is, let's get some scenarios together and share them with the Better Business Bureau so that you can take a look at how it's going to go and how it's going to work. Because that's going to be something that every business is going to be trying to figure out. And I think it would behoove everybody if we documented 3 of the basic scenarios, came back out and said, okay, so here's a business that had 10 employees, half of them were part-time. How do you figure out that calculation? So on the 3508 form, there is a calculation in there. Part of that form includes a specialized calculation. And then in addition to that, there's the information on the CARES website, and there are a couple scenarios. So let's do this. Let's take that back. Dan will keep your information and we'll communicate out some of those scenarios, or maybe that's for webinar number 2, where we can get into some of the weeds as to what does an FTE mean for me? Because we could probably spend half an hour sharing some examples of what that means.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have someone who asks, I laid off an employee on March 27th. After I got PPP funding, I hired another employee at the same pay and same hours. Can I still use the easy form?
Okay, thank you very much for keeping our workforce employed. And so on that EZ form, if you fall into those 3 classifications, they're not going to be, the EZ form isn't going to be looking at who that employee is. If you have a similar situated employee, you're paying them something similar to what you were paying your other employee, and you fall into those 3 bullets, then you should be okay, because we understand that things happen and your employees are going to change. So they're looking at, instead of looking at whether Michelle Smith still works for you, they're looking to see if you still have an employee that's still working similar amount of hours and still full-time, or maybe 2 part-time employees. So they're looking for that equivalent, that position. So yes, it sounds like if you meet the 3 bullets, the test of the 3 bullets, you laid someone off, but you have them back, then you should be good to go. And that's another question we can include on our information for a follow-up webinar. Breaking down the FTE more, and what does that mean for my respective business?
Great, thank you. So we have a question. What happens if we only cut hours on some of our employees and others we kept the same? Do we still qualify for the EZ form?
Okay, so let's go back to, so the key is 25%. I'm going back to our form real quick. So I guess I would have to, the question would be, have you reduced, are the hours reduced by more than 25%? And then do you make those, do you fall within, so bullet number 2, when we were talking on the application process, and the 3508 says did not reduce the salaries or wages of their employees by more than 25%, and did not reduce the number of hours of their employees. So take the first one, answer the first question. Did you reduce the salary or wages of your employees by more than 25%? So you said there was a reduction. So you want to look and see, hey, is that reduction more than 25%? Look at that threshold on it. I reduced 10%, but is it more than 25%? And you want to get an answer to that question. And then you want to go to that second question. And did not reduce the hours of their employees. So break it down, answer question A for the 25%, and then answer question B and see where you're at there. And I don't want to, if you have to fill out the 3508, that's fine too. It's not that many more questions. It's the easy form is just a condensed version of the 3508. And to be quite honest with you, I've spent almost 20 years helping people to apply for federal programs, and that application really is not extensive. It's not bad. You can get help with it. So if you're in the position where you have to fill out the 3508, it's not that many more questions. So don't worry about that.
Great. We have a question. I'm not sure if I can make sense of this, but it says, can an LLC with no EE pay self a draw use easy form?
Okay, so I'm not going to get into the LLC questions or the S Corp questions because those are a little more complicated. I want to explain the basics, and we can take that back and we can take a look if the LLC is first. Do you meet those 3 categories? A, and then B, if you can't answer yes to those 3 categories, then you're going to look at the 3508 loan forgiveness calculation form that also has that Schedule A worksheet. And again, it's not that huge, not that many more questions. So let's take that back as a question. We'll research it and we'll figure out exactly which form, and it may also come back to be what is the situation with your specific business as far as reducing salaries, wages, or reductions. So what was that gentleman's name?
I think that was Alice.
Alice. Okay, Alice. So what we'll do is we'll add that to our list of questions, and provided it's probably going to depend on what kind of what's going on in your respective business.
So we also have a follow-up question from Alice. So she writes, we were funded on May 11th. Our 8-week would be from May 11th through July 5th. However, to get 8 weeks, which would be 4 pay periods, we are semi-monthly. Can we place covered period from May 11th through July 15th? So it includes our paycheck for July 15th.
Okay, so earlier in the PowerPoint, I mentioned, you're going to look at the 8-week period, and then you're going to also look at the flexibility with the 24-week period or somewhere in between. So one of the key things to remember is you want to exhaust all the funds for which you're requesting forgiveness for. So say I have a business and I get my loan today, right? My Paycheck Protection Program loan money comes into me today, and I'm like, terrific, I got the 24 weeks. Well, I don't have to wait for that 24-week period to end. If by December 1st, I've spent all the money that I'm asking forgiveness for, and I've reached my 75% or my 60% of my payroll funds that I'm looking to spend down, then I can ask for forgiveness at that time. But it really is going to depend on your respective business, when you received your funds, where you're at with spending down. I think my first question would be, have you spent down all of the money? And then secondly, say this doesn't have to be absolute. So say you haven't spent 100% of the money, there's still a reduction in eligibility. So if it's impossible for your business to reach that 8-week 75%, that's okay. You're still going to get credit, and there'll be a reduction, and maybe that reduction and the ability to have that capital continuing is more important than making sure you get 100% loan forgiveness. So take that into account. And Alice, send us your scenario, and we'll get back to you. Where you're at when you receive the funds, where you're at in your spend down, and we could give you some options on the 8-week versus the 24-week. And I originally had a slide in here to describe the 8-week and the 24-week. I just can't do it all in an hour. So That's why I think that would be a second webinar, 8-week versus 24-week. What does it mean for me? And then full-time equivalents, breaking that down at a level that everybody can understand.
Great. So we have actually some other follow-up questions, kind of same scenario as Alice. So we can go ahead and share that with Jamie privately so she can get back to you, just because everyone's situation is different. There is a question from Kathleen. One of our 6 employees will be on maternity leave or disability pay when we use the loan. Are we allowed to increase the salary of 2 other employees to pick up the work, or do we need to replace her pay with a 6th person?
You know, somebody asked me about maternity leave for Paycheck Protection Program. So we're going to take that one back too, because I know that, you know, we want to work to keep women employed in the workforce, and maternity leave and disability are unique situations. So let's take that back and see what we find on Safe Harbor or any other information out there as to if they'll be counted against you. But yeah, definitely you can take it upon yourself to hire somebody new or replace that that salary or wages with somebody else equivalent. I'm kind of, my follow-up questions to you are you paying for maternity leave or not? So yeah, so send us that question with your scenario and we can do some research on it and figure out the best way for you to support your staff on maternity leave and at the same time maximize your forgiveness.
Great. I think that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Jamie, for sharing this wonderful information with our audience today. Like she mentioned, we will follow up with questions and answers for those questions that we weren't able to answer that needed more personalized answers and research as well. But thank you so much, Jamie, for taking time out of your busy day. Very beneficial, of course. Thank you everyone else for attending. If you do have any follow-up questions that you can think of after this webinar, you can go ahead and send it to me as well, and I can make sure Jamie gets it. We can do our best to follow up and get you the answers. But thank you everyone. Please stay safe out there and stay healthy.